In this video, I'll be assuming two things. One, that Monster Hunter World was your first Monster Hunter, or you're just not completely familiar with everything that Generations and now Generations Ultimate will offer. And two, that you're probably well versed in the weapon that I'll be discussing, so this won't be a full-on guide, but rather a quick summary on the differences between the weapons in the two games.
What's the difference?
Hey guys, what's up? Right now I'm going to talk about the Switch Axe. World's version of the Switch Axe is one of the best versions of the Switch Axe we've ever had. With World's improvement to movement and rolling options, they helped one of Switch Axe's biggest problems, which was kind of clunky movement and maneuverability. The Switch Axe got some nice rolling options and some nice switching options as well. A lot of the mantle synergized well with the Switch Axe too, allowing it to be even more aggressive than it already could. Let's talk about the new Switch Axe stuff really quick. I talked about some of the maneuverability options because World as a whole is what made Switch Axe a bit better. In terms of what they gave Switch Axe specifically, it really isn't that much. The first thing they added was the amped blade mode, or the heated blade mode. This mechanic was cool, as it was kind of the Monster Hunter team finally admitting that the main part of Switch Axe will always be the blade, something they definitely leaned towards in Generations 2. The amped blade mode allowed us to do more damage, but it also gave us access to one of the coolest things that World had to offer, the zero-sum discharge. This thing is a lot of fun. But aside from those two things, the weapon's attacks in specific didn't really change that much, save for a slightly new different sword combo. Now while the moveset didn't change that much, I do have to say that the Switch Axe will feel quite different in Generations Ultimate for a few couple reasons. For one, Generations Ultimate will be coming from Gen, obviously, which was a game that heavily prioritized the sword mode, and because of how a couple of different hunter arts worked, the sword mode was very powerful and the axe mode barely got any use. Generations Ultimate helped remedy this in two different ways. For one, they nerfed the specific hunter art that I'll talk about later, which benefited the sword mode, and they slightly affected Striker style, which was another heavily favored style for Switch Axe users. With that in mind, let me talk about the styles, because most of them play pretty differently. Let's start off with Guild and Striker. I'm going to put them together because they're very similar. The only difference here is that Striker is going to have a very simplified combo, specifically in the sword mode. What Striker style will lose is the double swipe in sword mode. This seems like a minor thing, but when you have all your hunter arts up and you're hitting a weak spot, the double sword mode does a lot of damage. So much so that some people in speedruns have taken Guild over Striker just so that they could have the double sword swipe in there. There are two specific hunter arts that you want to use together, so Guild mode is still able to do that by sacrificing one hunter art, and Striker is able to have the two that you want plus a third in a trade-off for losing the double sword swipe. Next up is Aerial style. Aerial for the most part is a supportive type role, getting the mounts for your team so they can do more damage, but there will be some weapons that actually have good aerial styles as they don't lose too many important combos. Switch Axe is one of those. It'll have some cool aerial options, especially with sword mode, as you're able to do 2 hits in the mount attack, and you can also do your elemental discharge off of the jump. Once the monster's been mounted and it's on the ground, you still have most of the moves that you want to do, most notably the double sword swipe, so you'll still be able to do pretty good damage with aerial Switch Axe. Adapt style is not too bad either, although it's not used too much, seeing as how the Adapt evade really doesn't add too much to the weapon. In fact, it makes it a bit weird to play, as some of your more important attacks, like the big axe finisher, is tied to an Adapt evade, so you won't be able to do it regularly unless you do it out of a dodge. Brave mode is really fun, and it adds a lot of mobility and switching options. For the most part, Brave mode will have 2 options of playing. As always, we'll have the sword focus, which is amped up even more in Brave as we're able to do 2 discharges in a row, and we have the double sword swipe that we like. However, while in Brave mode, every time you switched from sword to axe, you'll do a special powered up attack. I like it because it really lives up to the name Switch Axe, since you're constantly switching, instead of just relying on sword mode. Last but not least is Alchemy,
Do a barrel roll!
which is interesting for Switch Axe because this is going to be one of the few weapons where Alchemy style is actually more than just a support style. In this case, Alchemy can still be used viably because it's able to carry 3 hunter arts just like Striker, but it doesn't lose the double sword swipe. And if you're actually able to use the Alchemy mechanic to your advantage, you'll find that you'll be able to charge the hunter arts faster as well. Lastly, let's talk about those powerful hunter arts that I've been mentioning. The first one is the one that got nerfed. It didn't get weakened, rather they just made it so that it takes longer to charge. This one would be Energy Blade. When maxed out, this hunter art will immediately refill the sword gauge of your weapon, but not only that, it grants your weapon 30% affinity right after you do it. This made it so that you never really had to use Axe to charge up your sword mode, you just used energy charge. Despite its nerf, it's still incredibly strong in Generations Ultimate, and it's a go-to hunter art for most of the styles. The next one is another very powerful hunter art, one that synergized very well with energy charge. This one would be Demon Riot. Demon Riot sort of reminds me of the amped blade mode in World. What Demon Riot would do is essentially power up your sword mode and make it so that your sword gauge decreases over time instead of per attack. However, this could be coupled up with energy charge, and you would be able to indefinitely keep Demon Riot up as long as you're staying aggressive. In an ideal hunt, you would be able to stay in sword mode forever, and Demon Riot would essentially stay on until the monster died. Now it's a bit harder to pull off. Next we have Translash, which is one of the highest damaging arts in the game, but it's kinda hard to pull off because of how long the combo is. You'd really want to save this for when you know the monster is not going to move, or you can use it against one of the big bosses in the game. Last but not least is the new hunter art, which is Tempest Axe, which is a little love for Axe mode. Basically, you do a powered up Axe combo, and by the end of it, it'll leave you with a buff that powers up all of your Axe mode attacks. Another little thing is that both Demon Riot and Tempest Axe will work into Translash and power it up, since you're doing both sword and axe attacks in the combo. Nerf aside, Striker style will still be the strongest style, with Guild, Brave, and Alchemy being tied for second right after. All in all the styles are fun, and have a little or all of what you like about Switch Axe in their style. Overall, if you liked Switch Axe in World, I think you're still going to like it in Generations Ultimate, although it's just going to take a little bit of getting used to, as it does play differently. It'll feel more stiff compared to World, as World made it a lot more smooth and easier to play. That being said, the principle will be the same. It's a very high damage and powerful weapon, with a lot of consistent damage too. Sword mode is still more powerful and kind of the priority of the weapon, but in both games you'll be able to sneak in a couple of axe attacks in there. It might feel a little weird switching in between World and Generations Ultimate if you're a Switch Axe main, but nothing you won't be able to get used to in just a couple hunts. I hope this helped you to see a couple of the differences between the weapons in the two games, and gave you an idea of what to expect and what not to expect when you try it out in Generations Ultimate. Thank you for watching, and happy hunting.